version of Adventure Seeker Sarah. So I'm very excited to be here, very excited to share all of my adventures with you. But I realize that some of you might not even actually know me. So let's just tell you a little bit about Sarah. So I am a photographer. That's what I've been doing for the longest. A little bit of everything, portraiture, families, but of course, travel photography as well. Although my guest today has been doing that a lot longer and has some really incredible things to share with you. I'm also a travel writer, as is today's guest. So I am an adventure seeker with A Canada Travel. So I'm blogging there about my adventures all over Canada, as well as having my own blog that's just starting and doing a little bit of freelancing here and there. So anywhere I travel, I'm going to write about that because my primary thing is sharing everything I do and building those connections with everyone around me. I'm also a homeschooler, 5 kids, lots of adventures. That's what we're going to be mostly talking about today, is all of our travel schooling. World schooling is another term for that, but we're not necessarily all over the world. There's a little bit of that. We spend a lot of time, even within our own city, doing what I would call travel schooling, getting out in the world and learning about things. And that's a lot of what we're going to discuss today, and how you can, even if you're not a homeschooler, even if you don't have kids, how you can sort of apply that to your life and still get out in the world and travel, do interesting things, have a lot of fun, and learn at the same time. Because, well, I mean, at least if you're me, learning is a lot of fun. I'm also a nature enthusiast. For anyone who's spent any time with me, going for a walk with me is either the most exciting thing you'll ever do or the worst thing you'll ever do. I'm really incredibly enthusiastic about a lot of things, and nature is one of those things, particularly lichens, really fond of lichens. So that's a thing you'll hear about a lot if you step into the woods with me. I'm an Ontario Master Naturalist. I'm on the board of directors for a naturalist club, and I'm pretty much just forcing my kids into the woods all the time. And anywhere I go, I'm finding, national parks or trails that we can go on to find interesting things to do there, but also to learn about all of the plants and animals everywhere I go, because that's kind of one of the things I like about traveling, right? Is it's a new, exciting adventure everywhere you go. And I don't just mean every new country, every new city, every new parking lot, every new field. There's something new and exciting to see. So I kind of thrive on finding all of the adventure, all of the excitement in every tiny little thing that we do. And, there's a lot more about me. I have a few other quirky things that I do. I'm a paranormal investigator with Class A Paranormal. So that's a fun new thing that's on the go. And I kind of, like my guest today, Greg, I live a yes lifestyle. Something exciting comes along, I'm going to say yes to that. There's fun to be had everywhere. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to tell you a little bit about travel schooling. So for us, travel schooling is kind of just how we leverage all of our travel as what I think of as an unparalleled learning opportunity. Like, can you think of any time that you've, in grade 3, sat and read your textbook about pioneers and remember something that you read in that textbook? Or are you thinking about the times that you went to the Pioneer Museum and churned butter or milked the cow? And those are the things you remember learning while you were in school, right? I mean, not to say that you're not going to remember anything that you ever learned on a test or anything you read in a textbook, but those things that stick with us forever are those experiential learning moments. So that's what we do when we travel. To be honest, a lot of our history, science, that's done out in the field learning, right? So that's a big part of our homeschool. And I can't say enough good things about that. That is, like, in my opinion, one of the most amazing ways to learn, not just for kids. I mean, that's how I still learn. If you ever travel with me, you'll see me get really excited when a guide knows a lot about, the local wildlife or about the history of a place. That's what really gets me excited, going out and learning about where I'm at. And there's a lot of value for me in experiential learning. So like I said, when you're thinking back to your time in school, you're not remembering all of those, dull moments of lectures and textbooks and tests. Not to say that you're not learning anything from those, and everybody learns differently, but it's all of those moments of, time in the science lab or out on field trips. Those are the things that you're going to remember, projects done with your friends, right? It's all of those things where you have a hands-on experience. So we can translate that into traveling. So I just want to say that I know that me telling you to travel for school or travel for learning does come from a place of privilege. Like, not everyone has the time or the money to do that, or the lifestyle that allows them. But if your lifestyle does allow for it, there's a lot to be gained. And like I said, it doesn't have to be traveling to a brand new country or even traveling outside of your city. Like, there's so many fun things to be found in every tiny spot. And there's lots of museums that have free nights. You can go out onto a trail, just take out a hand lens, a $5 hand lens, and there's so much that you can see that you've never seen before just by looking up close. I'm going to bring up lichens again because that's one that I go to often. It's one of those often overlooked things that is everywhere, and nobody really realizes it. But once you get in close, you're looking at a whole new tiny little world, right? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we make our almost constant travels. Of course, COVID, so not so much right now, but our almost constant travels are main vehicle for learning. Of course, we do worksheets, we have work we do on the computer, but I think the majority of our actual learning has come through traveling. Now, it might not be the way for everyone, but if you can take away one small tip from this, then it's still going to enrich your life in a small way. So we, of course, we kind of try to make use of that time while we're in the car too. That's our time to do workbooks or reading. Some people have car sickness, so that doesn't work. But we also do projects when they're in the car. When we were in the northeastern United States, we made a graphing project of counting all of the birds everywhere we went. We had a tally for each species, and then we graphed them later. We had the girls journaling about everything we did as we were going along to give them a chance to write every day. Also, while we're in the car, we're doing random quizzes. We have like quiz books that we use and quiz cards. Sometimes the girls will start quizzing each other on topics, on places that we just went, that sort of thing. So that's always fun. We also take that time to do unit studies. So I remember one trip that we went on, we went through the whole Little House on the Prairie series, basically while we were traveling from place to place, because we were on a 10-day trip. So we also happened to be going to pioneer museums in that time. So that was our time to do that unit study. And in the car, we kind of fill our downtime with documentaries and audiobooks. We listen to all the Narnia books on the go. And really, that's kind of our time for like what we call emergent curriculum. Do we see an opportunity to learn something? Like, we were on one trip and started seeing a whole bunch of really interesting bridges that were all designed differently. So I got on my phone and started Googling. We started learning together, because I don't know a lot of bridges and the different types of bridges and all about that, but we learned together about what the different bridges were and their different purposes and why they're designed in that way. So looking for opportunities of things that you're seeing regularly, or things that the kids see that they go, hey, that's interesting, let's learn about that. So that's another great thing about travel schooling, is you just never know what might come up. But that's kind of the great thing about real life too. If you watch for opportunities, you can always be learning. So one thing I like to tell people though is, there are times that I've found, like, we've been doing this a lot. So for the best experience, and that depends on who you are, maybe you really like crowds, you like being around a lot of people at the same time. But if you want times at museums and attractions where it's a little less busy, because we homeschool, we have the opportunity to travel on the off times. So you're going to places like, we had Six Flags passes, for example. Now, those Six Flags parks open in May, but typically aren't busy until summer. So we would be going to our Six Flags parks and then to museums at the same time in the spring, when most kids are still in school. And gosh, we had one museum, a whole entire pioneer museum, with volunteers at every station that were there to tell people all about their craft, and nobody was there to tell. It was just us. So everyone was absolutely delighted to have the girls come by and be so interested in what they were doing. And that was because we went in May on a Wednesday when nobody else was there. Now, of course, you'll get school groups coming on field trips, but again, pro tip, if you go after 1:30, that's when they start leaving, because they have to get back to school. So there's times that you can kind of make sure you're fitting in those gaps where there aren't a lot of other people there, and you're going to get even more of a learning opportunity out of that. Someday I'll do a whole entire chat about all the different museums that we've been to and all of my great tips for that. But when it comes to museums, the best thing I can tell you is about reciprocal agreements. Now, if you saw me on Jen's show a couple of weeks ago, I talked about this because it makes me really excited, and it's a thing that not a lot of people know about. So in our area and all over North America, if you belong to a science center, for example, there are a few other reciprocal agreements. The science center one is my favorite. If you belong to a science center, you buy your museum pass for your museum in your city. But what a lot of people don't know, and what isn't really heavily advertised, is that all of these science centers, all throughout Canada and the US and throughout the world, have a reciprocal agreement, which means that if you have a pass to one, you can get into them all for free. Now that doesn't include special exhibits and stuff like that. And, some of them have their IMAX movies and that sort of thing. But for your base galleries, everything's included. And that means that you can go to every city and for one price be getting into all of these museums. We have used our pass for our local science center more outside of Ottawa than inside, like by far. Every city we go to, we look up, okay, what science centers are near here? So it doesn't just include science centers, the science center pass. There's all science and technology. So sometimes there are children's museums included. We went to the Math Museum in New York, which was absolutely phenomenal. So looking at those reciprocal agreements, there's one for the zoos and aquariums that works in a similar way. There's one for art museums. So anytime you're getting a museum pass, look and see if they have a reciprocal agreement and if there's some way that you can leverage that for extra fun when you travel. Yeah, like I actually have a whole blog post about this. So I have a lot more to say about reciprocal agreements, because even like Six Flags is another one that people don't realize. If you buy a pass to your home park, so we have Rerun in Montreal, and we can go to all of the Six Flags parks for the whole entire year, which includes parking. Sometimes if you buy your pass at the right time, they usually have a sale around Labor Day. And if you buy your pass at the right time, buying your pass for the whole entire year is cheaper than going once. So you have to, every time you're going anywhere, just check to see if they have a reciprocal agreement, because it will save you a ton of money. Like, there are a lot of us. Going to a museum is not cheap. So if you can make that a little more budget friendly, you should do that. The other thing that we like to do is kind of like ride on the backs of the school programs. Almost every museum, any attraction has some sort of field trip that they offer for schools. And often, if you just ask them for the materials that they give out to schools, like we often will go to museums and ask if they have a scavenger hunt that they give to school groups. And they almost always do. They have something that they give to their school programs. And generally speaking, they're more than happy to give you more materials to learn with. So that's another great tip that people don't realize that you can utilize. Just ask. Never hurts to ask. As long as you're happy with accepting no for an answer, it's always okay to ask. And of course, traveling is always a great opportunity for unit study. And I really like to do as much child-led learning as possible. So watch for what your kids are interested in. If you're traveling around and you see a sign for a dinosaur park, and you're like, oh my gosh, we should go check that out. Just go do it. Go learn about dinosaurs. Why not, right? As long as you're not on a tight schedule, do your best to weave those learning opportunities in and learn about the things that interest your kids, because again, you kind of want them to be excited about learning, and you want to be excited about learning. There's no reason that you can't just go a little bit off what your plan was and learn something new. And of course, like, I kind of like to create learning opportunities wherever we go. This is not something I recommend that everybody do if you're not homeschooling, although you can, because scavenger hunts are fun. But this photo is from when we went to Fisherman's Cove. They have all kinds of monuments, all kinds of interpretive plaques. There's a museum there. So I went through the day before I went with the kids and made a whole entire scavenger hunt for them and a list of questions, and kind of led them around the space in a way that was going to best facilitate learning. And then that also led them to things that I thought they might be interested in, gave us the opportunity to, go down to the beach and look at tide pools too, and they thought that was interesting. So you can always create your own learning opportunities too. And the one thing that I want to stress is that there is some value in flexibility. I know planning is great. I love planning. I have lists everywhere, and I will plan things down to the minute in my day sometimes. But with that, I know that life is life. So there's always room for a little bit of flexibility. And that's really important when we travel, because some of our best finds have been on the fly. When we see a sign and go, oh, interesting. What's that museum, or what's that attraction? We literally just saw a sign on the side of the road and thought, well, let's go see what that's all about. And those have led to some of our most interesting travel times. So if you're building in a little bit of padding, you might find something really exciting that you wouldn't have found otherwise. And this is kind of a funny thing to talk about, but if you are teaching your kids on the go, especially if you're using my tips and going during, times that you would be usually during school, during school hours, that's fine. You might not get so many dirty looks, but we've gone to amusement parks on the weekend. The photo on the left there is when we went to one of the Six Flags parks. Now, Six Flags this is my tip about utilizing the materials that they have for schools. Six Flags hosts a math and engineering day for students every year. All the classes come, they give them a little packet where they have worksheets where there are math problems and engineering problems that relate to all of the rides. I thought maybe we would go, but it didn't line up with our schedule. And I emailed them and asked if they could just send me the packet. And of course, they were happy to do that. But that meant that I was in an amusement park on a Saturday with my kids standing in line doing math questions. And there was a lady in front of us on one of the rides who was just glaring at me the whole time. Like, how dare you make your kids do school at an amusement park? Now, little did she know that they've been also, at amusement parks on a Thursday and doing no school, or that they're still having fun, lady. Like, it's fine. But we also, the other photo is in Central Park. We were out with Steve Brill, who's a famous wild edibles expert. And we had a lot of people looking strangely at us, not dirty looks necessarily, but looking strangely at us, and a lot of questions about what we were doing. So I really enjoy teaching people and bringing people along for the journey, making connections, and getting excited about answering questions. But if you are going to be learning on the go, then probably be prepared for that. So some of our favorites, I'm just going to tell you a few. If you are anywhere near the northeastern United States, lots of things in Canada too, of course, but some of the things for us that we've really loved, Diggerland. If you don't know about Diggerland, it's the best amusement park ever. We love amusement parks so much. Diggerland is entirely construction themed. It's in New Jersey, so look up Diggerland USA. It's in New Jersey, and all of the rides are construction themed. So they're either actual construction equipment that you can just operate, or construction equipment that's been converted into rides. Like there's a dump truck with seats that just dumps you straight up. It's silly. It's so silly, which is kind of why I love it. It's also so much fun. We went there on my birthday one year, one of the best birthdays ever, and we will certainly go back. And although I haven't been to this, there is a Diggerland XL for the adults. So you get to ride the big vehicles. But anyways, Diggerland is awesome. We've been to so many museums. My kids have been to countless museums, some of the biggest museums in North America. And still to this day, they say that the best museum they've been to is the Museum of Trades and Crafts also in New Jersey, actually. And I'll put some of these links up on my Facebook page for you later. But this place, the reason it was awesome is because it was so interactive. Every single exhibit had little drawers that you could pull out where you could touch things. You could feel the weight of an iron. You could move around pieces to, make a quilt. They had little cards that you could write down what your favorite part of the whole entire museum was. You'd stick it in a little thing that people could come and read it later. So it was highly interactive, which is great. Where you see us wearing all the ponchos there, that's in Herkimer, New York. And we went there to dig for Herkimer diamonds, which is just petroleum quartz. But they have a little educational center. We're learning about the rock cycle. We're learning about all of the things that we could be reading about in a textbook, but we get to spend a few minutes learning about that in their learning center and then go out into the field and actually dig. Like doing this in a hands-on way that none of us are ever going to forget, not just the kids, like the adults too. And I know I'm talking about experiences that we've had with our kids, but there's no reason that you can't just do this as adults too. When we were at Herkimer, there were two grown adults just there by themselves, and that's awesome too. So of course, COVID. Hopefully we're more or less on the other end of that. But travel during COVID with kids is a little bit tricky, especially like before everyone was eligible to get vaccinated. You still want to be safe, but there are lots of things that you can do within your own city. Every city has something that you can do. Plus, there's you can drive to lots of places within North America, get out and play mini golf, have adventures at home. We had a whole entire day where we just had a luau. Go to the beach. We live near a beach. And because we travel so much, we had never been to that beach. We'd gone maybe once and not swam there. And during COVID, we went 20 times. So it did give us a bit of an opportunity to see the things that are right in our own backyard. So make your own fun wherever you are and find ways to get out at least close by. But hopefully we're on the other end of that. So I am going to welcome our guest for today, which is very exciting. We actually have a lot in common. Greg Goodman is also a photographer and a travel writer and a homeschooler. So I'm going to show you a little bit about something he has going on, and that's what we're going to talk about first.
My name's Greg Goodman. I travel the world taking photos and blogging. When I'm on the road, I like to get well and truly lost so I can really get to the heart of a place. And now, I've come to get lost in Korea.
Wow, what an experience!
Unbelievable. Oh yeah? That's right, show your Toshe. Give me your sexy face. Oh yeah. Korea!
Hello, Greg.
Hey, Sarah. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah.
So, of course, the first thing I'm going to ask you about is what we just watched, this show, how this came to be. Your show on National Geographic was quite the story. So why don't you tell us about that?
Sure. It's funny. It was almost 10 years ago that it started, the whole adventure of this show happening. And like so many things in life, it's about connections. It's about the people you know and the authentic, genuine human interactions that you have. So a year before filming, I had been hired by Samsung to present my work at Photokina, which is a photo trade show in Germany. And at the Samsung booth, there are 5 of us presenters. And one guy was a guy from National Geographic. And, it's every photographer's dream to have anything to do with National Geographic, right? And so I was like, tell me more. I want to know everything. I was like his little puppy dog, like following him around. And while I did not have this amazing connection with him, I formed this beautiful bond with his assistant, Dahi, who was there to sort of help make things happen for him. And I kept in touch with her. And towards the end of the conference, she's like, hey, Greg, I'm going to be filming a TV show in Korea sometime next year. Do you want to be a part of it? I'm like, yes. You don't have to tell me anything else. Yes, 1,000 times yes. And I never, didn't know what that meant. I went back. I was living in Thailand at Chiang Mai at the time. And I went back and it was like 6 months and I didn't hear from her. And then one day I got the bloop sound on Facebook and it's like, you want to do this thing? Yes, absolutely. Let's do it. And then that's kind of how it happened. They flew me out to Korea. I was there for about a month filming. It's 10 years and I still pinch myself sometimes that I can't believe it actually happened. Like it is by far the coolest thing to ever happen to me in my career. I call it a career, but it's just, I was a guy who was traveling the world for 10 years with my wife. We were just doing our thing. We were bouncing back and forth between living in the States, finding jobs that we kind of cared about, working for a while, saving, selling our stuff, putting it in storage, traveling for a couple of years, living abroad, coming back to the States, doing it all again. And I was just doing it because it was fun, because, we didn't have kids at the time. It was like the world was our oyster. We did whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted, without any responsibilities. Right? Thus was the life of no responsibilities. And I followed my heart, and I trusted that success would follow me. And it did. Like, to be honest, it did, because I truly believe, because I was doing it because it was fun. I was doing it because, like you, like, I think it's by sharing our truth, by sharing our story, our experiences, and not just like, oh, I went here and took this pretty picture, but it's like, oh, I went here and took this pretty picture, and here's how I felt. And, here's the story of me making beautiful photos at Angkor Wat, but here's also the story of the time that my wife and I were traveling in, Bolivia, and we were on a bus, and the bus stopped at the side of a lake, and I went out to go pee, and I came back from the bathroom, and I use that term very loosely, and the bus was on a boat with my wife on it, floating away across the river, and I had to figure out. Fortunately, I spoke some Spanish, and I was able to communicate with some people and find out this was actually a completely normal thing. But, for that, the story is like the story. Yes, it's a crazy story, but the story is about like the mini panic attack I had, right? The feeling of my heart beating against my chest like a caged animal, like terror, fear, what's going to happen? The sweat dripping down my face, looking around, not knowing what's going to happen. Am I stuck here? My passport, my money, my wallet, my everything except my point and shoot is on this bus, on this boat with my wife floating away. And like, how is this going to work out? Like, to me, that's the interesting stuff. That's the real stuff.
Yeah. And you're so right. I mean, it's not
human experience.
It's not just about showing through photos, which of course both of us do a lot of it, showing people what we're doing. But you're right. It is about immersing your reader in what was going on, right? You want to make people feel like they were there and not just show them what you were seeing. So I'm not going to give any spoilers for your show. I'm going to post a link and make sure people go watch it. But through that was a huge experience for you. You saw a lot of Korea and did a lot of really interesting things. What would you say was the standout for you? I know there's going to be a lot, but if there was one thing that you're like, there's no way I could have not done that, that's my favorite.
Yeah, it was in South Korea. There are these people called nakji, which is they're like these little octopuses, and they're nakji fishermen. But it's not like, sitting on a boat with a hook, with a fishing rod. That's how much you know about fishing. It's you're taking a shovel and digging through mud trenches, chasing after these little octopus that are squiggling away, forming their own channels, their own like tunnels through the mud. And I watched the guy do it, and they gave me a shovel. I'm like, this is going to be good TV. Let's have the the American kid go shovel and catch an octopus. And I was so freaking determined, and I actually did it. I caught the octopus. I picked it up with my bare hand, and my greatest memory was just this feeling of like exhilaration and joy. And yes, when I like, yeah, as I like thrust it above my head and caught it. And like that moment right there of just like accomplishment and like, I didn't really think I was going to be able to do it, because what chance did I have? And I did. So it was pretty cool. So that's probably my single favorite memory and moment of the experience.
That's amazing. It's like clam digging on steroids. The clams, but
they're
smart.
That next day, I'll tell you what.
So speaking of accomplishments, you have a lot of accomplishments when it comes to your photography. I'm certainly not going to list them off because it's a list the size of my arm. But what are you most proud of there?
That's a good question. At the end of the day, the accomplishments are cool. I'm grateful for the accomplishments, but the accomplishments, like I said before, like are a product of truly believe this, like following my heart and putting myself out there and being vulnerable and sharing those feelings and those emotions because it's real. So like what I'm most proud of is not any single like gallery exhibition or the National Geographic or any of that stuff. It's like the individual lives that I get to I don't want to say this to come across as like cocky or egotistical, because I truly work hard to not have that behind it. Like the lives that I'm able to touch and the people that I'm able to influence and inspire by sharing my journey, my life, my truth. That is to me the most rewarding part of doing what I do, and what continues to fuel me. Like it's been a long road since getting back. My wife Carrie and I, we got back to the States in 2014 after this 10-year like epic travel thing. I tried to make the photographic storyteller a viable business in the States, but things are a lot more expensive in Northern California than they are in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And I couldn't do it. And I kind of just like gave up for a long time. And I started a web design and marketing business, and I love helping people there. And I work with therapists, psychotherapists. So I love giving back, helping the helpers. But there's this like creative spark that kind of got extinguished because I wasn't sharing this, like my core passion and like my feelings, right? Any of it. So to me, like one of the most rewarding things has been kickstarting it again and realizing like, even if I'm not staying in shady $3 guest houses with bed bugs and writing about it, or watching my wife sail away, or making TV shows, or whatever like the stories are, we all have our own beautiful travel stories. It's just so nice to like, and especially, I heard you mention, I loved your presentation and everything you shared, right? Like, who am I now? I'm a dad. I have a 6-year-old son, Bodhi, and a 3-year-old daughter, Luna, and they are my life. And you are an inspiration, Sarah, what you're doing with your kids. Like, that's what Carrie and I always dreamed of. And, I'll be honest, Bodhi has not always been the biggest lover of being in cars. So that's kind of like dampened this idea that we had, but now he's starting to be more comfortable, and he's discovered books on tape and all these other things. So it's like, we're stoked to start getting out there and doing what you're doing. And it's like evolving this idea of travel to exist in the world that we exist in now, because it doesn't have to be what it's always been. And it's always changing, as as I heard you spoke to, as you well know, as a fellow travel blogger and adventurer and storyteller and photographer and parent and homeschooler and all the things.
So when I'm traveling, I know I come across a lot of people, and you seem like a very similar sort to me, where you're talking to everyone and making connections, and you're just a very open person. So I know that I hear a lot of interesting stories and meet a lot of interesting people. Is there anything that stands out to you as like a story that really sticks with you of meeting someone in your travels?
They kind of all blend together, because like you said, everybody has their beautiful story, but like it's more like the themes that run through all of our lives, especially anybody who loves travel. Like, why do people love travel so much? Like, yes, it's an escape. It's an escape from life back home. It's an escape from reality. What is reality? That's a whole other conversation, right? But like, and some part of it is escapism, but it's also this desire to understand, to like, how do we fit in? How do we fit in the big picture? Like, and what does travel gift people? Is it gifts you this understanding that we're all the same. Right? Like that's what I love. And that's like the conversations I love having, whether it's we're talking about the universe and meditation and Dharma, or whether we're just talking about like, this is what a toilet looks like across the world. This is what a taxi looks like. This is what a plate of food looks like, right? Like we all are connected. We're connected energetically. We're connected metaphysically. We're connected by the fact that we live on planet Earth, and that we all, our bodies, our lives, our minds, we all have the same needs. So I think that's kind of what it is like the different conversations that you have with people, like understanding their take, their vision, their view of how we are all interconnected. Like those are the stories that really excite me to hear, to talk to people about. Like I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Well, I mean, that is the thing for me for traveling is, and for life, really. It's all about connections, right? Not just connections with the people that I'm around all of the time, but with everybody that I encounter, with nature, with the past, even with myself. And traveling allows for a lot of those things. And I think it sounds like you have, similar reasons for traveling. So that's kind of exciting. But you have something else really exciting that you've been working on that I want you to tell everyone about, this course that you've created.
Sure.
So I won't give it away. You go ahead and tell everybody.
Oh, I'd love that. I appreciate the opportunity to sort of, share my passion. And so everything that I do is something called photographic storytelling. And what that basically is really simple. You take words, you take photos, and you put them together. And that's literally it. It's super simple. But people don't really do it. People are either sharing beautiful photos, and especially on Facebook, right? Like social media, especially Facebook, is this incredible connected platform. And it brings people together who are not physically together. It's, of course, it's redefining the concept of friend, but it's also redefining the concept of community. Because in the past, like we are stuck with, that comes across as wrong, but like we are limited by the people in our geographic region. And if you're somewhere and you have a certain way of thinking or a certain belief and there are not people around you, then your community doesn't really thrive, because either you're pretending to fit in or be someone you're not, or you're just like, I don't want to have anything to do with these people, and you just don't have community. But online, on social media, we're able to connect with people in this global world of ours and get to know them and talk to people in Canada, in India, in Asia, all like everywhere across the world. Like, what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? So because of that, everybody's sharing more and more on social media. And of course, the pandemic has really ramped that up a notch, and people are more disconnected than ever. And people are sharing more than ever on social media, and especially photographers and travel lovers. What do we love doing more than anything? We love sharing. For whatever reason you love to share, whatever, there's myriad reasons to love to share, but so often you make a post, you share a beautiful photo, it gets a couple likes, one from your parents, one from your partner, one from your best childhood friend, and then that's it. It kind of disappears forever. But what photographic storytelling does is it tells the story behind that photo, and it gives you an excuse to actually fill in the 1,000 metaphoric words that a photo tells. The reason being to share your life, to share your life's journey with friends, with family, with loved ones, with complete strangers, right? Because a stranger is a friend you haven't met yet. So what my course is, it's called From Taking Photos to Making Memories. It's 6 weeks of video content. It's me sitting here talking, sharing photos, sharing travel stories, teaching you, travel lovers, photographers, people who want to share your lives, photographers who want more people to see your images. Because it's true. If you just post a photo, its reach is limited. If you share just a story, its reach is limited. But by combining the two, that's how you actually stand out in a crowd. That's how you stand out in a busy social media crowd. So whatever your goal is, if it's just sharing what's happening with your kids, like, right, I'm working on a post right now to post today. And literally, I want to recap this beautiful morning I had with my daughter in the backyard, where we swung on a bunch of swings and played with our chickens and jumped in the trampoline, right? Like, it's the type of thing that on its own, people aren't necessarily going to care about reading. And then I have like this nice picture that I took, I'm really excited about, of a walnut tree reflecting in a puddle on a 2x8 board. If I posted that photo by itself, no one cares. If I posted the story by itself, it's like, oh, great, dad loves his daughter, woohoo. But because I'm going to combine these two, it's providing this comprehensive narrative of taking people on an adventure, on the journey of my life, and forming connections with people. And that's what photographic storytelling does. That's what you're going to learn how to do in the course. Plus, and I'm going to sort of list this out, you're going to learn how to improve your photos in just a few seconds with photo editing techniques and photo composition techniques, really easy stuff. There's an overview of Lightroom. There's an overview of some photo editing apps that I love. I'm going to share my technique, my style, which of course you can adapt to your own. You're going to learn how to breathe new life into old travels. Because Sarah, I don't know about you, but I have like 150,000 photos on my hard drive that have never seen the light of day.
100%. Yep.
Dozens and dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of stories that have never seen the light of day. And the photographic storytelling, so many travelers, forget like professional travel photographers, like anybody who travels has these things. And they deserve to be seen because they are your unique, beautiful view of the world. Nobody sees the world like you see the world, Sarah. No one sees the world like you. Whoever you are watching this video right now sees the world, and you should be sharing that. So you're going to learn how to dive in, how to organize your old photos, how to do all the things to make sure that you can actually find the pictures you want, how to tell the story of your life. Like, how do you want to be remembered? What is the narrative of your life? How are you going to share it? There's a segment on how to make a website, how to make a blog, how to create a printed full color travel magazine, so that it is actually something tangible. Is it over here somewhere? Don't mind me. Right, like I made this a few years ago. It's A Journey Awaits. It's a full color magazine of some of my favorite travel stories. Because you know what? I love technology. I love it a lot. I can't trust that in 100 years, my grandkids are going to know what the heck a JPEG is, or a MOV file, or an HTTPS website. But assuming that we take care of it and I don't like leave it out in the sun, like this will still be around. So it's all about creating connection in a disconnected world.
Absolutely. That's
that
fantastic.
was a very long answer. I hope that.
Oh, I love it. And actually, you know what? I'm going to say that from what I've seen, we don't know each other very well. And I'm sorry to my friends that I've known for years, but I probably end up reading your posts more than almost anybody else because they have this photographic storytelling style. You capture my interest with awesome photos of you doing great things with your family. And then there's this fantastic story behind it. So your course, I would imagine, is not just applicable to people who are off traveling all the time, but just people who want to share their lives with family and friends, right? It's not only for if you're off jet setting about the world.
Not at all. Yeah.
Adventures everywhere, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's one of my things is rekindle your creative travel spark in your own backyard. Because whether you're traveling or not, whether you've never traveled, it's exactly what you just said. Just sharing your life and being connected and having adventure seeker Sarah, who I've never met in the real world, who I've only connected with on Facebook, feel like you know me. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what we need more of in this world of ours, where we're all just so like, this is you, this is me, and let's come together.
There's always a connection. So one of our other connections, of course, is homeschooling. So yes. I would love to know what made your family decide to homeschool.
How do I say this? It just kind of seems like the only option. And it was a very, very long, arduous journey for me to get to the point, because I grew up, as did so many of us, in the public school system here in the United States. And I was like, I turned out fine. My education was fine. I learned how to read. I learned how to write. Like, I don't want to be responsible for teaching my kids anything. That sounds like not what I want to do. But then it was almost like realizing it's like this shift of, who says that at age 6 you need to be reading? Who says that age 8 you need to be doing multiplication tables? Who says that if you're not doing this, you are doomed to failure in your life? And that is what the non-homeschooling mentality or structure is. And I get it. Like, I'm not trying to condemn it by any means. You have tens of millions of kids every year who need to go through some kind of something. And you have parents who do not have the ability, whether it's financial or time or support or whatever, to, as you said in your presentation, to do this. It is a luxury. It is a privilege. And I completely and totally acknowledge that as you said, I am coming from this from a place of privilege. And from that place of privilege, I think that it creates more well-balanced children who can pursue their own interests, who can pursue their own passions, who can say like, hey, let's find out about those bridges, right? Who can get, we have something kind of, so that we have some touch a truck here, which is where they bring in trucks from all over. And it's right, like, it's like, these are the things that our children get passionate about. And then we go to the library and we get books and we read about it and they learn about it. And Bodhi at 6 is so interested in reading already. Yeah. Is he reading where a 6-year-old would be reading otherwise? No, sure not. But that's not going to stop him. That's not going to mean that he's going to be an illiterate adult. But that was a fear that I had to get over, right? Like, and I think a lot of people do when it comes to this concept of homeschooling, of unschooling. Well, what I really want to do is world school. That's what I really want to do, is get us out of the States, back on the road, get those passports stamped, and let's go live in some intentional communities, some places around the world, and just do this thing.
Well, my recommendation is that you come to Canada first, and I'll show you all sorts of cool things here, and then you can move on from there. Cool. So before we go, I want to ask you, you've been traveling for a long time, you've been blogging for a long time. You, like me, are an adventure seeker and big on connections all over the place. What is your number one piece of advice for fellow adventure seekers or new adventure seekers, people who are just starting to, go out and explore the world?
All right, I'm gonna give two separate advices for the people who think about turning into a business because it's so popular now. Like, get paid to travel, make money, become a blogger, get rich, work around the world, quit your job, all these promises like passive income, make money while you're on the scuba diving boat. Like, all those things are possible and they take a lot of work. And do it if you're starting a travel blog, if you're doing any of it, do it because it's fun. Do it because it brings you joy, because it makes you smile, because it lights you up. And if any of those other things happen, cool. But take the pressure off. Don't start with that pressure, because that's just setting you up for heartbreak when it's not moving at the speed you want. And of course, some people are meteoric success stories out of the gate, but most people are not. Most people that I talk to are sort of taking their time or whatever. And so that's my advice to anybody who's looking at it from the business side. And to everybody else, I mean, just do it. Do it right. Do it up. There's no right. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Like, do it again. Follow your heart. Have fun. Go out there. See what the world is like, and just trust. And trust that the locals are going to take care of you. Trust that everything is going to work out. And whatever attitude you go into a place with is exactly what you are going to manifest. If you go in thinking you're going to get robbed and you're going to get ripped off, that's what's going to happen. If you go in thinking you're going to have the most amazing time ever, sure, there's still that teeny chance you might get robbed or ripped off, but odds are that is the reality you're going to create. So that's my sort of big, without giving it any prior thought, advices.
Well, I think that is great advice, Greg. And thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure to have you as my first guest.
Yay. I'm so excited for you in this budding podcast and entrepreneurial and just fun adventure. And, everything you're doing is so inspirational. So thank you for having me on your show. Like, this is
do all the
great.
Things. Thanks again, Greg. I'll let you go for now. And I really appreciate you coming. Hopefully you can come back and see me again sometime in the future.
Cool. See you in Canada.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you so much to Greg for coming in today. We're going to sign off soon. But before I do, I'm going to tell you to go like Adventure Seeker Sarah on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the places. But also go find Connect TV and make sure you give them a like, because we have a whole host of other shows on Connect TV coming up. We have the Jen Hayward Show. We have Hey Josh, What You Drinking? That's pretty awesome if you like beer. So that's a big one, and a whole bunch of other shows. So make sure to go like Connect TV, and also go find Greg on Facebook. I will go post some links to him as well on my page and on Connect TV. But he's an awesome person to follow. Like I said, you'll feel like you know him after a week. It's phenomenal. His style of storytelling is just, I can't even describe it, but you'll see quickly. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and meet me back here again next Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more adventure.